Man, every single speaker's race now feels like a main event boxing card, man. Watching the C-SPAN while it happens honestly is a joy. I think it's one of the few times where people could actually just watch C-SPAN go on and on and on and on and not really get bored. Because people get into it. It's become an occasion. It's become an event. Merry Speakers Vote Eve. Yes, exactly. I wonder if we're going to break any records this time. What do you guys think? You guys think we're going to break the vote record? For those of you who don't remember, or, you know, you were not into politics at the time, or you just don't remember, Kevin McCarthy broke the record since the 19th century. I think it wasn't until like the 1850s or 60s or 70s. I think it wasn't until, I think the last time was in 1870. He broke the record for the most House Speaker votes with 15 House Speaker votes until he was elected House Speaker. And then after the 15 House Speaker votes, eventually he was cooed by a small cadre of now confirmed to be kitty diddlers like Matt Gaetz. Of course, there were others as well, but also Matt Gaetz, who is now, according to that bipartisan House report, was paying to sleep with underage high school juniors. You know, he according to Kevin, it's because he wanted to Matt wanted him to shut down the investigation, and he wouldn't. And so he made it an issue with such a slim majority, and that, on top of a few other issues, ended up bringing down his speakership, which then was chaos for months before eventually he started going through votes. And they went through votes, and multiple other options were shot down. It was like 3 or 4 before eventually they got to Mike Johnson, who was picked basically because Mike Johnson, even though there was other more experienced options, and there was other more populist options as well, but the more populist option, which was, oh God, somebody remind me. Who was the guy? Oh, God. I know that Steve Scalise ran for it, and he took an L. I know another person ran for it, and he took an L. And some of the reasons that they're taking L's was stuff like, well, this guy actually voted for recent legislation that makes a legislative underpinning for gay marriage, meaning that if the Supreme Court was to vote to say, oh, actually, you know, we have nothing to say when it comes to gay marriage and whether or not gay marriage is constitutionally protected, this would mean that there'd be legislative underpinning. Just like when Roe versus Wade was overturned, if this time gay marriage was overturned by the Supreme Court, then we would have a legislative underpinning for it, and therefore there wouldn't be millions upon millions or thousands upon thousands or whoever amount of Americans who would then have their marriages null and voided that they've been living within. But one of the people running for House Speaker, I think it might have been Steve Scalise or one of the other options. I believe it was Tom Emmer, actually. Yes, it was Tom Emmer. He got shot down for that reason. Mike Johnson legitimately got the job, not because of expertise, not because he's a skilled politician. He was only there for about, I think, 1 or 2 terms. His biggest event that I can recall was the fact that he was leading the fight for Donald Trump to stay president of the United States, and was trying to send down the Electoral College vote back down to the state houses like Trump wanted, which were majority controlled by Republicans, in order to see if there was another path to keep Trump president after he lost the election. That was his biggest moment up to that point. He was really picked because he didn't have an extensive enough record to be hated. That was really it. And so now, after Kevin McCarthy faced 15 rounds, Mike Johnson, when he was confirmed, even when he was confirmed, it took 4 rounds of the House speakership vote. I don't know how many rounds it's going to be this time. The majority for the Republicans is just a few seats. It's a handful of seats, less than 5. And so they can really only afford to lose like maybe 1 vote. If they lose just a couple votes, if you know, somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I do doubt it's going to be, since she's been more generally loyal to Matt Gaetz, but if you got somebody like Chip Roy, and you added somebody like I don't know, who's somebody else out there, like a Lauren Boebert, and they said, well, you got to give us XYZ really powerful committee position, or make XYZ commitment we know you cannot make at this point, we're not going to vote for you. then you could have multiple rounds. And it will be embarrassing. Whether or not he'll get it, I don't know. I think the biggest thing for him is that Donald Trump has endorsed Speaker Mike Johnson's re-election for the speakership. Even after Speaker Mike Johnson went through with a plan that, a financial plan or a spending package, kicked down the can down the road, that did not include an increase in the debt ceiling, which Chip Roy and other more traditionally fiscally conservative types got outraged about. But Donald Trump wanted to have that done by Biden. The Democrats had no interest in participating in that. You need a 2/3 majority to pass this. They were not going to do it with the slim Republican majority. And so Mike Johnson eventually did it without Donald Trump's priority of having Joe Biden raise the debt ceiling so he could spend away once he goes into office, and he's not going to have this political hot potato right after he gets elected. Democrats don't want to give him that leverage for no reason. Democrats have no motivation to do this. The deal maker, once again, fails to make a deal. This fails. Mike Johnson passes the other fiscal package. But despite the fact that Mike Johnson did that, still got the Trump endorsement. And I think that's going to help him. Because if there's only one or two people that fall out of line now, Trump's going to smack him down. I didn't expect him to smack down as hard on Chip Roy when Chip Roy started lambasting against the rising of the debt ceiling from a traditionally fiscally responsible conservative position, which, while it was not a big message on the campaign trail, and I've been saying for a while that fiscal conservatism seems to be belly up within the Republican Party right now. It's just not something they talk about much on the campaign trail. And if it is talked about on the campaign trail, it's talked by individual congressmen to people in their district, not by the President of the United States, because the President of the United States was the spender-in-chief. 25% of our national budget currently comes from the Donald J. Trump years. 4 years in office is 25% of our multiple trillion-dollar national debt. And he wanted to raise the debt ceiling because he's going to increase that percentage. He's going to increase that percentage. But, I mean, like, I was surprised that elicited such a negative reaction. So if anybody breaks out of line, they're going to be smacked down upon. So here's what I'm saying. Here's what I say. I think that ultimately what would serve to get Mike Johnson out of there would be a collection of enough people saying no that there could be no concentration on any individual congressman. So you would need something like, while it only takes a few to cause a crisis, if you are one or two in number, you're easier to single out and get repercussions for, and get negative repercussions. So on one hand, yes, it only takes 1 to 2 congressmen to disrupt Mike Johnson from being House Speaker, as they try to leverage for a better, say, a committee appointment. But on the other hand, if you're just few in number, all that rage is going to be directed towards you. Where that debt ceiling vote that eventually did go through, a ton of Republicans voted for it. And because a ton of Republicans voted for it, Donald Trump couldn't concentrate on any individual like he tried to do with Chip Roy. So I would say that I think Mike Johnson has a decent enough chance of probably being elected House Speaker again, definitely with Donald Trump's support. But if it wasn't for Donald Trump's support, and it wasn't for Donald Trump telling people to rally around the flag right now, I think we'd be in a very difficult situation, because I don't think Mike Johnson alone has the political capital to survive such a razor-thin margin on his own. No, I don't think that.
And I think what Democrats are going to do is be like, okay, boys, y'all won. Let's see what you can do. Your first test is, can you elect somebody to lead your own party? So, I mean, I say that with a little fun, because they will sit back and say, okay, show us what you can. Show the American people what you can do. The American people absolutely spoke up at the election and said they wanted cheaper gas and groceries. To Mara's point, I don't think they wanted folks who were going to have disarray. They'd like to see this get done in one vote. I don't think they're going to see it done in one vote. You already have one congressman from Kentucky who said he's going to vote no. You can't lose anybody else. And I think he will eventually get there, but I bet it takes a few rounds, because some of these members, I think, want an ounce of flesh or something that they particularly would like. Committee assignments, more voice. I will remind everybody that Matt Gaetz was a thorn in everybody's side, and he became Attorney General nominee, then dropped out, then was a congressman and dropped out. Like, he had a lot of notoriety from doing that, and I think a lot of other folks would like that same note.
This is the problem, is because of the games that Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson had to play, largely playing ball with the legislative arsonists who got very few actual achievements in lawmaking, but got many achievements in the podcast world and the fundraising world. Now there's been more encouragement in order to get more updates on the internet and to get more donations and to get more attention to cause a scene. And also, if you do actually want to get some legitimate power out of this that isn't just based in the finance or the attention, possibly use it to try to strangle yourself a bigger committee position, which has always been the case. But this latter half, the encouragement of the mess making, where the online right was defending that Kitty Diddler up to the bell when he was getting pushed for attorney general. I mean, Mike Johnson, and this is something I want to throw out there a few times, because as much as Mike Johnson is not like particularly bad in comparison to the contemporaries, I think that more just speaks to his contemporaries than it does to the integrity of Mike Johnson. Let's talk about the Matt Gaetz thing for a second. Matt Gaetz, we now know from the bipartisan report released by the House Ethics Committee, made up of Democrats and Republicans, that Matt Gaetz almost certainly slept with an underage girl, a junior in high school, and paid for it, as well as dozens of other women. And the report alleges ecstasy and cocaine, and, he didn't listen to Johnny Paycheck. You stay away from the cocaine train, but he didn't while in office. And now he's not going to be running for office again. He's out of there. But this ethics report, looking into whether or not this man, who is going to be the top law enforcement official in the entire United States, the most powerful country that has ever existed, Mike Johnson was going out of his way to try to suppress that report to stop people from finding out that he kitty diddled, that he took a dip in the kiddie pool. He went out of his way to do so. The real horror of it is that a few days before he went out of his way to stop that report, that other of his contemporaries, others in the Republican movement, were saying, let's not do this. Let's not soil ourselves with this degenerate. Let's keep him away from us. There was people who have been publicly trashing Matt Gaetz for bragging about, taking Viagra and chasing it with energy drinks so he can go all night long in these sex parties and all this crazy stuff, that he was showing nudes of people to like a congressman on the House floor. Like, there have been people who have not liked Matt Gaetz's behavior up to this point, who have wanted him, to hit the road jack. Not to even talk about the legislative chaos that the man has caused for the Republican Party with that whole mess with Kevin McCarthy for 15 goddamn rounds, and then shooting him in the leg when there was no plan in how to replace him as House Speaker, leading the Republicans into a legislative chaos and making this one of the least productive House sessions, if not the least productive House session in American history. Mike Johnson said he was not going to interfere with that committee investigation, and that it was not his place to decide whether the report should be released or not. And then preceding him saying that, once it became clear that Matt Gaetz, with no public experience as a lawyer, he was not a judge, he was not somebody who, tangled with the legal intellectual heavyweights. He had a short private practice where he was shortly suspended from the bar for lack of payment to his dues. He does not have an extensive legal experience, and he was being made the top law enforcement official in the country. And we should not even know if the widely known story of him paying to sleep with underage girls is true. It wouldn't be so ridiculous if it didn't also come from the same movement that's talking about blowing out all the deep state pedophiles, and the person who's going to go on that crusade happens to be a diddler. Maybe it's the type of thing like, in order to hunt the deer, you must think like the deer. In order to hunt the antelope, you must think like the antelope. So they're like, oh, we need to get the pedophiles. Quick, Matt Gaetz. I don't like it, though. Oh, snap. Axios just made a list. This is very interesting. Of the Republicans to watch during the Mike Johnson vote. Okay. This is interesting. This is new. This is different. Representative Andy Biggs, that makes sense. Tim Burchett, Eric Burleson, Eli Crane, Andrew Clyde, Michael Cloud, Andy Harris. Andy Harris makes sense. Chip Roy, makes sense. Victoria Spartz, she sucks. Well, a lot of these guys suck, but she's particularly infuriating. Angley Ogles, Representative Ralph Norman, Representative Scott Perry, and Greg Stube. The first roll call will be tense, but House Speaker Mike Johnson has a clear path to winning the Speaker election on Friday. I think we get it done on the first round, Mike Johnson said. Wow, he's hopeful. Okay, well, I mean, what is he going to say? Round 7. I'm guessing round 4 is. That's not exactly a projection of confidence, is it? On paper, Johnson has a better outlook than former Speaker Kevin McCarthy did in 2023. McCarthy had a 4-seat margin in January 2023, 5 Republicans, no votes ahead of the Speaker election. Johnson has a 2-seat margin and just 1 public no vote ahead of the election. That's Representative Thomas Massie. So for those of you who don't know, there is currently 1 Republican who has said no, and that is Thomas Massie. Meaning that if 1 to 2 more Republicans say no, like we talked about earlier, then that's it. It feels like it's different from 2 years ago when House Republican told Axios. Yeah, I think people have PTSD from how stupid it was for you guys to let Matt Gaetz derail your entire conference because he didn't want to be outed as a diddler. And then you guys helped him do it. Whatever. Johnson skeptics, the lawmaker said, are looking for a couple policy accommodations, while McCarthy has an axe to grind. Case in point, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who tried to oust Johnson last year, said Thursday she'll vote for Johnson and urged others to get on board. President-elect President-elect Trump is also involved. He called for one of the holdouts, Representative Chip Roy, to press him back. To press him to back Johnson. There we go. Punchbowl reported. Mainstream GOP lawmakers have warned Johnson against handshake deals with conservatives. There are significant communications, said one lawmaker who told Axios that these GOP moderates are warning Johnson. Don't do what the former Speaker Kevin McCarthy did. Don't give promises upon which you cannot deliver. Don't give promises that require us to do things that we don't want to do, that are beyond reasonable. So last time when Kevin McCarthy became House Speaker, after 15 votes, he had to make a ton of different promises, and it was like at any point, any single legislator could say, screw it, we have to have a new vote. And that was one of the rules that he implemented at that time. And that was the rule that Matt Gaetz used to eventually undercut him and kick him out as House Speaker. We'll see tomorrow. It'll be interesting to watch. We do have the Civ game tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I don't know if I think the vote will not be done by then. So as we're playing Civ, we will hear about the vote, but we'll probably have a better idea of how the vote will go when the show opens tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific, which is when tomorrow's show is going to be starting. And we'll have 2 hours of news coverage before we get into Civ. I think this is why they're alluding to making Chip Roy the head of the Rules Committee. That would be a hell of a concession for the man Donald Trump was recently just attacking like he was an idiot fool who needs to be primaried. How do you go, like in this head, how do you go as a Trump supporter from being like, Chip Roy is an idiot fool who needs to be primaried, which is what Donald Trump was saying about him when he didn't want to increase the debt ceiling because he's a fiscal conservative, which I've been told many other Republicans supposedly are, and then go to, actually, never mind, let's enrich him with power. Making Chip Roy rules chair. My gosh. But this is also Representative Lauren Boebert telling Matt Gaetz that making him rules chair would get it across the board. If he did that, though, he would certainly have Chip Roy's support, but Chip Roy is not really a fantastic legislator if you look at his background and what he's actually passed, so it might be like, yay, you're speaker, but if you don't have like a good right-hand man, well, whatever, we'll see. And plus, I think just like Jake Sherman saying here, A lot of Republicans don't like Chip Roy and would not like the idea of him being rules chair. But it certainly would get his vote. Certainly get his vote. I can't understand any other circumstance that got MTG to move in favor of Johnson. Committee positions. Committee positions, committee positions, committee positions. That's what it was last time. It was committee positions. And that's probably what it was this time. Committee positions. Good talk. Happy I could help you figure it out. Do-do-do-do.